This week in South Florida, Election Day is right around the corner, and the presidential campaigning will continue to the very last moment. President Obama holds a rally here this afternoon. We'll have a preview and the latest on the Romney-Ryan campaign. We'll talk with Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz of Weston. Why hasn't she debated her Republican opponent, Karen Harrington? And can Wasserman Schultz put aside partisanship and reach across the aisle? Plus, our roundtable with former U.S. Senator George Lemieux with the GOP point of view, and Congressman Alcee Hastings for the Democrats, plus our own team of reporters. The stories people are talking about on a special one-hour edition of This Week in South Florida. Good morning. We're almost there. Election Day is Tuesday, but the campaigning is far from over. The candidates will be holding rallies, phone banks will be calling, surrogates will be stumping, and voters will be deciding, the few who haven't already made up their minds or who haven't already voted. In Florida, about a third of all registered voters have already cast their ballots. It is unprecedented. There are nearly 12 million voters in the state, and about 4 million of them have voted. Phenomenal. Here are the numbers in Miami-Dade County. Nearly 236,000 people voted this past week. In Broward, 250,000 people voted early. Across the state, 3.9 million people either voted early or sent in an absentee ballot. Both candidates badly want Florida's 29 electoral votes. The latest poll shows Governor Romney up in Florida by 6 points. But that is not stopping President Obama from fighting for a victory in the Sunshine State. He will hold a rally in Hollywood this afternoon at MacArthur High School. Local 10's Carlos Suarez is there live. Carlos, I know in your earlier reports you said there's already a big turnout.
Michael, that's exactly right. We've been here all morning long, and I've got to tell you, just when you think this crowd can't get any bigger, more people just continue to show up. I can't even begin to tell you where this line begins or ends. It wraps around the high school, and it's the kind of enthusiasm that the Obama campaign wants to tap into today.
President Obama will crisscross the country today campaigning in 4 battleground states, including Florida. Now that early voting is over, the ground game for each of the campaigns shifts to voter turnout. For the president, that means running up margins in counties he should carry on Tuesday, including Broward. With the race in a dead heat nationally, the president spent Saturday rallying supporters in Iowa and Ohio, while pop star Katy Perry warmed up the crowd in Wisconsin. Most polls show the president with a lead in each of those states. A sweep of the 3 on Tuesday, and the president is in good shape to win re-election.
We made real progress these past 4 years. But Wisconsin, we're all gathered here today because we've got more work to do.
Here in Florida, most polls show Mitt Romney leading the way. A Tampa Bay Times Miami Herald Mason-Dixon poll shows the Republican with a 6-point lead among likely voters, 51 to 45%.
The question of this election comes down to this. Do you want more of the same, or do you want real change?
Romney's running mate Paul Ryan spent Saturday campaigning in Panama City, a part of the state the campaign is poised to do well on election night.
The president will take to the football field here at MacArthur High come 4 o'clock this afternoon. The campaign stop is one of 4 the president is making, and they're all in battleground states. Again, Michael, even though most polls show the president losing in Florida, in talking to a campaign staffer this morning, she told me this stop is really about voter turnout. A majority of the people in line here voted early, but a few that I spoke to said they're going to wait until Tuesday. That's the audience that the president wants to speak to later this afternoon. If we can come back out live to give you a sense of this, the crowd that's out here, I've got to say several hundred, if not at least 1,000 by now. We spoke to one woman who said she waited 6 hours to vote early yesterday. She got in line for this rally at 6 o'clock this morning. So by the time the president takes to the stage later this afternoon, she will have waited for him either to vote early or to see him in person almost 16 hours. Michael?
Very impressive. Carlos Suarez live in Hollywood. Carlos, thank you. Mitt Romney will take his campaign to Pennsylvania today, a state he has not visited very much until this week, after a recent poll showed that Romney was down by only 4 points in Pennsylvania. He decided to run television ads in the states, and he is making that campaign stop today near Philadelphia. Here is a look at the Rasmussen presidential tracking poll. It shows the presidential race is just as close as it could possibly be. The candidates locked in a dead heat, 48% each. This poll has a margin of error of 2.5%. We want to remind you that on Tuesday, Election Day, we have got you covered. Our reporters from Local 10 will be with the presidential candidates. Ross Palumbo will report live from Chicago from Obama headquarters, and Glenna Milberg will be with the Romney campaign in Boston. And coming up in just a few minutes, we'll have a chance to talk to former Republican Senator Norm Coleman, who is campaigning today in South Florida for Governor Romney. A few weeks ago, we invited Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz to come in and debate her GOP opponent, Karen Harrington. Ms. Wasserman Schultz said that her schedule just didn't allow that, so we heard from Ms. Harrington solo. In fairness, we want to give the Congresswoman a chance to state her case to voters in the 23rd Congressional District. The district looks like this. Here is the map. Much of southwest Broward, northeast Miami-Dade. It runs all the way down to the tip of Miami Beach. Late this week, I spoke with Representative Wasserman Schultz. And joining us now is Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz, the incumbent in the 23rd Congressional District, running for re-election. Congresswoman, good to see you.
You too, Michael.
Congresswoman, we're glad you're here. We frankly would have preferred that you had been here a couple of weeks ago when your Republican opponent, Karen Harrington, was here. You have not debated her one time. Why not?
Well, I continue to focus on making sure that from the very beginning when I first ran for office that I run a door-to-door, neighbor-to-neighbor campaign that makes sure that I'm accessible to my constituents, and I've been out there talking to voters about the importance of rebuilding this economy from the middle class out, and there have been a lot of opportunities for voters to see what is a very clear and stark contrast between us.
Well, the contrast would have perhaps been more stark if she had been sitting next to you. You just simply didn't want to sort of give her the credibility of sitting next to an incumbent member of Congress?
No, I'm just not focused on my opponent. I'm focused on making sure that I can talk to my constituents about the representation I've been able to give them, make sure that I hear from them on the issues that are important to them. People want us to talk about creating jobs, getting the economy turned around, and I've been spending my time running for re-election in the communities that I live in, that I love, and hearing from constituents directly.
Okay, well, not to put too fine a point on it, but I have to ask you, Ms. Harrington has said a number of extremely critical things about your voting record, but she's also said some things that are, I think, personal. She said that you have, quote, shamefully exploited your breast cancer experience.
Like I said, I am not focused on my opponent. I'm focused on me or the things that she's saying or doing. I think what she's saying and doing speaks for themselves. I'm focused on making sure that I can give my district the best representation that they deserve. Make sure that when it comes to issues like health care, that for example, 129 million Americans that live with a pre-existing condition can be able to make sure, thanks to Obamacare, that an insurance company can't drop us or deny us coverage for a pre-existing condition. And
all right, well, let's talk about...
Those are the kinds of issues I've been talking about.
All right, well, let's talk about Medicare, because it's a huge issue throughout Florida. 17% of Florida residents are receiving Medicare, and a number of them live in the 23rd Congressional District, as you well know. Now, I saw a poll by the Kaiser Family Foundation, which is a very reputable outfit, that says that the president was more trusted to handle Medicare than Governor Romney by a 52 to 36% margin in September. Now, the same poll found in October that it is Mr. Obama 46%, Governor Romney 41%. So the president seems to be losing some ground. Governor Romney seems to be making some inroads with seniors. Why is that?
Well, we've always known this was going to be a very close election, and but there's no question that seniors in my district, whether it's my district, Florida as a whole, or across the country, They want to make sure that they have a president like Barack Obama who understands that we can't shred the healthcare safety net that Medicare has been, that we need to continue to add years of solvency to it, like we were able to add the 8 years of solvency that Obamacare added. Make sure we improve on the benefits like Obamacare did, like the preventative care and the wellness visit that are available to seniors now without a copay or deductible. Not turn it into a voucher system like Mitt Romney would do.
And Paul Ryan, who really had been the intellectual architect of a lot of that plan, although in fairness, Governor Romney has pulled back from the plan that Representative Ryan had proposed.
Not at all. On the contrary, Mitt Romney has embraced the Romney-Ryan budget. Included in it is a plan to turn Medicare into a voucher system.
Yeah, premium support, of course, is what they call it.
But that's essentially a voucher. There's no difference. And what it does is it also repeals Obamacare. And so they're trying to lead, Michael, seniors to believe that their plan doesn't affect seniors now, but it does. Yeah. Because repealing Obamacare reopens the prescription drug donut hole and forces seniors to come out of pocket again, when Obamacare, because it's closing the donut hole, is saving the average senior in Florida $621 a year on their prescription drugs. Yeah. And Mitt Romney and Paul Ryan's plan would force seniors to choose between medicine and meals again. That's unacceptable. I've stood online behind too many seniors at the drugstore down here in South Florida. When 5 or 6 prescriptions come to the counter, they have to leave
choose a couple.
2 or 3 of them behind because they can't afford to take them all home.
I've been there
Obamacare
too.
makes that worry and that angst a thing of the past.
All right. Congresswoman, clearly Medicare, I believe, in the last poll I saw, was the 2 or 3 issue in the state of Florida. The number one issue, obviously, here is jobs and the economy. What would you do? I mean, I know that you subscribe to what the president has said, but give us some specifics. What would you do as a member of Congress to help get people back to work here?
Well, we need to continue to make sure that we strike a balance. We've got to focus on creating jobs and rebuilding the economy from the middle class out. The president has proposed making sure that over the next 10 years we can create 1 million manufacturing jobs. We've been already, any time since the 1990s, we've been able to create more jobs in manufacturing. We've begun to focus on making sure, for example, that we can change our tax policy so we incentivize corporations who are now incentivized through taxation to ship jobs overseas to make sure that we can incentivize them to bring them back here so we can make things in America again.
All right, well, let me
cut
just
taxes for small businesses like we've been able to do 18 different times.
Interrupt you to say that in the Senate, where things are a little bit more even between the parties, the Democrats are in control. In the House, where you said the Republicans are in control, and the likelihood of, I mean, look, gridlock is the word, the mantra for what is going on in Washington. I mean, are you going to say that you can help break that gridlock?
I can, and I have. I mean, I've been in office for almost 20 years now. 12 of the 20 years I've been in the minority. And I've been able to be successful and effective in the minority because I reach across the aisle, find Republicans that you can work with. Now, unfortunately, the Republican leadership in Washington has been focused on one job, Barack Obama's. And they've been made it very clear their only interest is to defeat him. What I've been able to do, frankly, through reaching out and working with Chairman Lamar Smith, who's a Republican conservative from Texas, who is the chair of the Judiciary Committee. I served with him on that committee for 5 years. We've worked together on the Child Protection Act to make sure that we can crack down on child sexual predators. And we passed that bill out of the House this year, and we think it'll pass the Senate. Also on taxpayer identity theft, a huge explosion in stealing taxpayer identity, tax returns, collecting their refund, and then people who've budgeted that in their family budget to get their refund can't get it.
Problem. We're number one as we are in Medicare fraud.
Even higher.
Congresswoman, let me ask you about Jewish voters. They are a relatively small proportion of the voters in Florida, I think maybe 6-7%, and yet their influence is huge because they vote at a very high level.
Right.
They're big contributors as well. There has been this huge push by the Romney campaign to erode the support among Jewish voters. Just a few blocks from here, I saw a billboard the other day. It shows President Obama on The View, and it says, Mr. Obama says yes to The View, but no to Netanyahu. That was the same day that Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel was at the UN. and the president and Mr. Netanyahu did not meet. Now, they're spending a lot of money to cut into the Jewish vote. Are they going to be successful?
I don't think they are, no. I pride myself on being the first Jewish woman to represent Florida in Congress, and I bring my love of Israel to work with me every single day. And I live the notion of tikkun olam. President Obama has a stellar record on Israel. What the Republicans are doing, and you have only to ask Ehud Barak, for example, the most decorated military veteran in Israel, former prime minister. He said,
Defense minister currently.
Yes, defense minister currently. He said on an American news program, when Wolf Blitzer interviewed him, if he could recall a president who had been stronger on issues important to Israel, and had there been a better president for Israel than Barack Obama, and he said in his lifetime he couldn't think of one. So what's going on here is that the Republicans know they can't get anywhere with Jewish voters on domestic issues like education, health care, reproductive rights, civil rights and civil liberties, standing up for people who have no voice. So what they're doing is they're trying to lie, distort, and undermine Jewish voters' belief that President Obama has a stellar record on Israel. What they're trying to do is create some seeds of doubt so they can cynically shave off a few points from the Jewish community. Look, they're being very...
You don't think they're going to succeed?
I don't. I don't, because I think Jewish voters, number one, know that when it comes to the issues that matter to them domestically, Democrats under President Obama have been there every step of the way, and the Republicans would take us back to the dark ages.
All right. In about 30 seconds, I have to ask you, you have been the chair of the Democratic National Committee for, what, 18 months? 18 months. Traditionally, the DNC chair serves through the re-election of the president, if you're successful, or through a election cycle, and then resigns and goes on to serve in Congress again, or other political positions. Is that going to happen to you? Are you going to leave the DNC chair?
I really am not thinking past the next few days. We're focused on getting everyone out to vote, encouraging people to cast their early vote, make sure that when it comes to the choice that we have in this election, focusing on helping people understand that we've got to have a president in office and a Congress that joins him, that helps the middle class, fights for working families, and doesn't drag us back to policies that crashed the economy in the first place. And I'm not thinking much past that.
Okay, and you've got your I voted early. How long did it take you to stand in line and get to cast the ballot?
Actually, just a little bit more than an hour and a half. And Michael, let me just close by just saying what a privilege it's been to represent our community in Washington, and I hope to have my constituents' support.
Congresswoman,
thank you.
Thanks for coming in.
Appreciate it.
It's great
to be with you.
Okay,
Thanks.
Thank you very much. All right, stay with us. We will be right back. We just heard from a Democratic leader in Congress. Now we want to get a Republican sort of point of view, a counterpoint. And this morning we do have the chance to talk live with former Senator Norm Coleman of Minnesota, a Republican who is campaigning in South Florida today for Mitt Romney. Senator Coleman joins us from a Get Out the event in Coral Springs. Senator Coleman, good morning. Good to speak with you.
Great to be with you. Thank you. Great to be with you.
All right. Well, I'm glad you have come for a beautiful day. It is gorgeous here. Don't know what it's like in Minneapolis or in Minnesota, but this is
a lot nice. Trust me, it's always a lot nicer here. There's no question about that. So,
all right.
I'm thrilled to be here for Governor Romney.
All right. Well, so what is your message to Florida voters, and why have you made this trip to come down here?
The message is to vote for America's future. Governor Romney has a plan to put America back to work, to grow 12 million jobs. President Obama has a record of unemployment being higher today than it was when he took office. 23 million Americans out of work, underemployed, 47 million Americans on food stamps. So Governor Romney has a plan, has a record of growing jobs, 25 years in the private sector, fix the Olympics. He can get America back to work, and that's really what America's looking for.
Yeah. Foreign policy, Senator Coleman, I think I saw you at the debate in Boca Raton, in fact. Were you not there?
I was there. I serve as a foreign policy advisor to Governor Romney.
Right. Well, let me ask you something about foreign policy. In the latest Time magazine, which I was reading last night, Rich Lowry, the editor of the National Review, a very conservative publication, is making the case for Governor Romney for president, but he also writes at one point, quote, "One hopes that if he really labels China a currency manipulator on day one, that he spends day two figuring out how to avoid a trade war." Now, it may not be the main issue, sexy issue in the campaign, but that's an important issue because of the importance of our trade relationship with China.
Well, absolutely. First of all, jobs and trade are important. This president hasn't negotiated a single trade deal since he's been in office. He hasn't held China accountable. Governor Romney is going to expand trade with Latin America, our neighbor. But he's also got to hold cheaters accountable. And by holding them accountable doesn't mean you have a trade war. It simply means that you have trade that's fair, that makes sure that we grow American jobs, don't lose American jobs. So President Obama hasn't done anything in terms of holding China accountable. He hasn't done anything on his own in terms of negotiating new trade deals. So Governor Romney's a business guy. He knows what it takes to grow jobs. Trade's part of that. He's not starting a trade war, but he will hold China accountable.
Yeah. Senator Coleman, let me quote one other thing from this essay, which I thought was pretty good. Lowry writes, his drone strikes, referring to the president, have been admirably deadly. He made the right call in bin Laden, but otherwise we are worse off than we were 4 years ago. Iran is closer to a bomb. Egypt is in the hands of the Muslim Brotherhood. A lot of the president's supporters say foreign policy has been one of his real success areas, but if you think about that, I'm sure you would agree, there are some shortcomings.
Well, listen, Osama bin Laden is dead, but Al-Qaeda is alive, killing Americans. Iran is closer to a nuclear weapon than ever before. Egypt is a mess. Syria is a mess. Chavez and Castro have kind of spread their wings into Ecuador, Bolivia, Nicaragua. Americans, I challenge Obama supporters, tell me where in the world today that America is safer or more respected than it was 4 years ago. Where'd the Russian reset get us? We pulled the plug out of our allies, the Poles and the Czech Republic, on missile defense to please the Russians. The bottom line is that America needs to be strong. America needs to work with its allies and not support its enemies. I think this president has had it reversed. As a result, Americans aren't safer today. We're not more secure. And Benghazi, by the way, the truth about Benghazi will come out after November 6th. But our ambassador should have been better protected. We should have responded quicker. I feel it breaks my heart that Benghazi, the truth of that won't come out until after this election. Americans deserve better. They really do. And we can do better with Governor Romney.
And finally, let me ask you just a strictly political question, Senator. Superstorm Sandy, the timing of it, and then these pictures of President Obama showing concern for the people of New Jersey and walking around with Governor Christie. Politically, that sent a kind of a positive message to some undecided voters and to people who like Governor Christie, didn't it?
Well, listen, in the end, Americans are going to vote their pocketbook, vote the economy. As I said, unemployment high today when President Obama took office. But also, as we stand here today, there are folks in Staten Island who they're still not eating. They don't have water in New York. President Obama's FEMA didn't pre-position water in place. So there was some good photo ops a few days ago, but the truth is sinking in now. And so I don't think there's any political benefit from the suffering that Americans are still undergoing today as a result of Hurricane Sandy.
All right. Senator Norm Coleman, great to be able to speak with you. Have a good day here in South Florida.
Thank you. It's always a great day in South Florida. Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks very much to you, sir. All right. Now to our ongoing efforts to demystify, as it were, these constitutional amendments that are on the ballot. There are 11 of them. Number 9 asks whether the surviving spouses of first responders and military veterans should be exempt from paying property taxes. Here is Glenna Milberg with our report.
There are those whose job it is to protect us by putting themselves in harm's way. Police, firefighters, paramedics, you get the idea. And that includes U.S. military. They are also homeowners, and Amendment 9 wants to know when a first responder dies in the line of duty, should his or her surviving spouse be exempt from paying property taxes? Certainly, that would help the families of those who made that ultimate sacrifice. Full and part-timers are covered, so are volunteers, and so are spouses of those who have already died in service. The biggest concern, of course, is the drain on the very tax revenue that pays for police and fire and schools and all the other services government provides. Somehow, government number crunchers came up with a cost of $600,000 to state coffers in its first year, though there is no way to predict how many people will be eligible. So that leaves the question to you. A yes vote on 9 grants a full property tax break to spouses of first responders who die in service. A no vote leaves the current exemptions unchanged.
All right, now Amendments 10 and 11, they both also give property tax breaks, and here is Glenna to explain them.
This time we're talking about businesses that pay property tax. Tangible personal property. That's the tax term that means items a company uses to do business. Furniture, shelving, machinery equipment, you get the idea. Right now, a business gets to have a $25,000 worth of those items exempt from property tax. Amendment 10 would double that, so $50,000 worth of a business's property would not be taxed. Plus, the amendment would also give cities and counties the ability to grant even more tax relief to businesses. Sounds like a break for business, and it is. And Amendment 10 supporters believe those businesses might in turn stimulate the economy. But that tax money, an estimated $61 million at least in the first 3 years, that's a chunk of the state budget and some 6 to 7% from local governments already struggling to fund basic services. What do you think? Double the tax break for businesses, then vote yes on 10? Leave the exemption as is, and then you vote no on 10. Amendment 11 is yet another possible property tax break, and this time it would be for low-income seniors who are longtime residents. The amendment itself does not grant the exemption. It gives cities and counties the authority to grant it, which opens up a whole different political issue, but that is another story. Amendment 11 eliminates property taxes, 100% gone for homeowners who qualify, 65 or older, who meet a low-income threshold, live in a home worth less than $250,000 and for at least the last 25 years. That could be a real assist for elderly residents on fixed incomes. Remember, they already currently do get an extra homestead exemption. Like these other tax break amendments, the consequence, the loss, would be to state and local governments that already struggle with budget shortfalls. How much consequence? $18.5 million just in the first 2 years if every local government in the state were to prove the exemption. So here is your question. If you think cities and counties should be able to eliminate property tax for eligible seniors, well, then you vote yes on 11. But if you believe their current exemptions are fair enough, vote no.
Glenna, thanks. Up next, how did we get to this point in the presidential race and other races, and who is going to win? We will ask our roundtable next.